Well, I'm super excited today. I've got a buddy of mine, Shadi, that's in the house, one of the co-founders and owners of Pathwater, and I'm super excited to hear your story. Yeah. Number one. Two, something I've got to give you credit for, this is one of the kindest individuals you will ever meet. And one of the reasons why I say that is because if you look at the actual spelling of your name, it doesn't say Shadi. And at the end, you have never corrected me, nor have I ever seen you correct anybody else. Ever, you know, everybody calls you Shadi, you know, because that's how it's, you look at it and you go, that's how it's spelled. Right. That's how it sounds. And you have never corrected anybody. However, your beautiful bride did, you know, she was like, you know, it's Shadi, you know, and if anybody's going to correct someone, it's going to be Sandra. So, you know what I mean? Course, so absolutely. She came in with it. So welcome. I really appreciate. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about this company that you have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me. This is long overdue.
Yes.
I'm excited to be here. And I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Pathwater. We are changing the world one bottle at a time by offering a more sustainable solution to single-use plastic. We're the first bottled water in a reusable, refillable aluminum bottle. And we've made some pretty big strides, but feel like we've just scratched the surface of what we have the opportunity to do as an organization. And so I think when we connected, it was a random connection, right? We were in the sauna.
Yeah.
But, you know, like-minded people just connect and
gravitate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I think very quickly we were buddies and just it's blossomed since then.
Yes, you know, and I want to get into your journey in a little bit, but you know, it's funny that you mentioned that. Here in Austin, we're filled with, it's a community of entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
You know, and there's nothing that I love more than to see my friends succeed. So, you know, it's constant. You know, you guys have stuff, and I don't know if it's a licensing agreement or how you have it, but like with one hotel.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you guys are in airports. You guys are, you're everywhere. And it's kind of like one of those things, you know, when you go to search or you go to shop for a car.
Yeah.
You never see that car anywhere, but as soon as you start paying attention, you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's you guys, you know, and it's insane. I'm constantly sending you pictures and stuff like that. And then we've got a mutual friend who constantly jacks with you as well on it, you know, and there's nothing cooler than to see your friend succeed. So, you know, congratulations on what you've created. I know that this is just the start, but it's tremendous to see this and see a young hustler just killing it. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about how did that, well, let's step back.
Yeah.
You know, at one point you were a little baby.
Yeah.
You know, tell me about your family life, where you grew up, where you're from, all that good stuff.
So born and raised in San Francisco, Northern California.
So you're a transplant.
I'm a transplant.
You're a transplant. There you go.
Like a lot of us here in Austin, man.
Yes.
You see less and less people actually from Austin
these
days. But back up before that, my parents are immigrants. They're from the Middle East, from Syria and Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Came to the U.S., met in Boston in college, Northeastern University, and moved out west and just wanted to start a life and, you know, build a family. And so I'm one of 5 kids.
Where do you fall in that range?
Second. Older brother, 3 younger sisters.
Okay.
And yeah, since a very young age, I was kind of pushed very hard academically, athletically, music, like every facet. I was a well-rounded kid, as they would call it. But I was taking math courses when I was in 5th grade at community college, and tutoring like 40-year-olds, you know, at a very young age. So I was given a lot of great opportunity, and now looking back on it, I feel very grateful for being able to have done those things and give credit to my parents for that.
Yeah. Those are often things that when we're growing up that we're like, man, you know, I don't like doing this. I don't like doing that.
Totally.
But then when you look down, to your point, when you look down, it took me until mid-20s to look back and go, they weren't that bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. Like, for me, it was during the summer days, all my friends are going out, having fun. My mom would be like, write a book report give it to me before you can go hang out. Like, read at least, you know, a few chapters of a book, write a summary and a report for me, and then you can go hang out with your friends. And it would just piss me off so much. I'm like, why do, you know, all my friends are like calling me like, hey, we're going to go to hit these jumps on the bike and scooter around and go downtown and all these things. And you know, so, but again, looking back on it, you know, it makes a lot of sense. I didn't have TV growing up. You know, so those things, now I don't really like to watch TV as much. You know, because I realize, you know, it takes a lot of time. I still watch a bunch of shows, I'm not gonna lie, but but like there's long periods of time where I've just completely put that aside and shut it off. And
it's wild to see how much those outside influences can just suck your time away. You know, it's social media in particular, and I'm, you know, I do it myself, you know what I mean? I'll hop on TikTok and I'll be doing laundry or I'll do this, but I'm actually flipping through, and Bristol will come in and go, for real? And I'm like, but what, did you see this, you know? And then I look and it's like an hour's gone. Granted, I do stuff in the same sense, but still I'm like, damn. You know, it's crazy how much that phone and just general media can just take from your life.
I mean, I deleted social media for like a month, but even in the first week, whenever I would sit down or something, I would open my phone, look for the app, just without even thinking. It's like automatic, right? And then I just open it for a second, and then I'll close it. You know, I'll like scroll or click on a few things, and then I'll close it. But that distraction, it's like if you're doing one singular thing and then you keep getting distracted throughout it, it actually, in order to restart, something that I heard is like takes 7 minutes every time you do that to restart going back into a certain task.
Almost like a warm-up. You got to re-warm up to get your brain going back.
Exactly.
It's funny, I got these and I bought like 10 of them and I've used it like 5 times. Shows you how much it really worked. And I actually bought it off TikTok. It was one of those digital timers that you spin and you hit it and it starts timing, so that you could say, you know, Bristol's huge in time blocking everything. So a lot of times I'll look at my calendar and it'll say, you know, read emails. And I'm like, that's going over the top. But she's from corporate America, and she used to segregate absolutely everything. Answer emails for 15 minutes, jump off,
My wife does the same exact
thing. You know, and that's probably why they get along so well. But it's a timer that times you for everything, and it'll go off. And it's great. I've used it like 5 times. It looks really cool on the desk, but you know, it's a great idea, and I need to use it more. And I appreciate you, you know, the reminder. But it's stuff like that. It's amazing how much time can be sucked away if you don't have a plan, just in particular. You know,
absolutely.
And going back to growing up, it sounds like your parents were very influential in the foundation that you built, or that was built for you. They wanted to make sure you had a solid foundation so that you could expand from, you know, which in turn, and we'll get into this in a little bit, you will find that you will do with your kids. You know, because it's those kind of learned behaviors. There's certain things I'm sure that you'll morph and change a little bit.
Of course.
But as you get older, you'll find yourself becoming your parents. A little bit. You know?
No, totally.
And it's, because you're going to take those things that you can look back on and you went, wow, I really benefited from that. I think that this is a core thing that I need to teach my kids to keep it going. You know?
I think I got a big head start in that way. And it also gave me a lot of confidence. Like, you know, look at me, I'm in 5th grade, you know, or like before I went into high school, I'd finished calculus. So I, you know, to be able to do that and go into high school and not have any math classes to take, you already finished all of them. It's like, it's a cool feeling, right? But I also, you know, there are pros and cons, like you said. So you kind of 100%. Take those learning lessons and those experiences and definitely will apply it to my kids.
It's interesting to sit back even when you get older and look back or follow. One of the things that social media has been kind of cool with is to look back at those individuals that were the rock stars in middle school and high school and kind of go back and see where they are today, right? You know, and in most cases, they've kind of sizzled out, you know what I mean? And it's the guys that have concentrated and did the things that you did that float to the top, which is phenomenal, right? You know, and it's always a great story. And I've always loved seeing that progression in people's lives. But it is kind of funny when you go back and you go, that was the cheerleader from back then that everybody thought was the shit.
Yeah.
Now look at her, or what have you. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that happens with all of them, but
Right,
you know,
right,
a good
right.
amount. You know,
Solid amount.
Yeah,
Solid
they fizzled out early. You know, but okay. So you did a little school. Did you graduate college?
Yes.
Okay.
George Washington University in D.C. Before that, I actually got the opportunity to go to military boarding high school.
Okay.
Culver Academies in
How
middle of
was
nowhere,
that?
Indiana.
How was that? Because
It was
we
great.
had our oldest, and he's my son from a previous marriage, and Bristol has two from a previous marriage as well, and then we came together and melted the pot, if you would.
Yeah.
Mine's a little bit more rebellious. You know, he's a little bit more like me.
Yeah.
You know, he lives in New York now. He's covered in tattoos, long hair, you know, looks like
Nice.
John Lennon. You know,
Yeah.
I look at him and I go, but in the same sense, I'm kind of like, I shouldn't do that because I don't want to give him enough, you know, room. But,
Right.
and I'll give you a brief little story. On his 18th birthday, just because he's a rebel,
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
he comes home and he's got a tattoo. And I'm like, bro, what?
What's going on?
He was like, well, you know, lunchtime hit, and he hit the tattoo shop. He was like, well, I'm 18, you know, and I was like,
Boom.
and I couldn't, because I'm covered, right?
Yeah,
Chest
you can't
covered,
say
I can't say anything. And in the back of my mind, I was like, that's badass.
Yeah.
You know, but then I didn't want to show that or what have you.
Right.
But now, and then one of the things that I pushed was military school.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, we got to get you centered. And I wanted to stick him in military school.
Yeah.
We didn't, but how was your experience? Because I think something like that would be tremendous.
Yeah, I loved it, honestly. And I didn't get shipped there because I was a bad kid. It was kind of, got a scholarship there, and it just gave me a lot of opportunity, a lot of, I don't know, it just allowed me to see the world differently. It was co-ed, and the girls' side wasn't military, but it was all based around leadership. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, to this day, I think it was one of the best experiences I've had.
It's foundation again, right? And
Yeah.
it wasn't even very. And all of our kids are good kids. You know, they never got into stuff that got them in trouble or anything.
Sure.
They know their boundaries. I just needed help with him to give him a better foundation. You know,
Yeah.
he came out. My ex-wife and I got divorced when he was young.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a lot of struggle between us two with him growing up, which didn't help him.
Sure.
And so
sure.
I was looking for help outside of that realm
Yeah.
to help create a better foundation for
Yeah.
him. And that's, you know, I felt that it was my fault and it was his mother's fault that, you know, that we could have done better as a team.
No, I
right?
get it. I think there are also a lot of like family dynamics for me happening at home that I got separated from that also served me in that way as well.
Really?
So yeah, I mean,
Things happen for a reason.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And so it sounds like that came at the right time and place that helped you grow into some of the stuff you have done today.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about path. Let's talk about how did you end up there? You know, this is not going to be the one and only that you and I do together. So I want to dive into individual circumstances in your life and stuff. I love hearing stories. I don't care who they're from. I just love hearing stories and journeys that individuals have had, overcome, and what's brought them from where they were then to where they are today. So I love hearing that stuff.
Sure.
And you always learn something, right? You take a little bit, leave a little bit, what have you, and that's one of the greatest things in life, I think. So tell me, how did you end up? Because when we did meet in the sauna, and that's one of the things too, you're one of the humblest people. You know, there's a handful of people that are extremely humble, and you're one of them. You know, you fall in that same category, and I'm gonna bring up a name, and you're gonna go, yeah, that's right. Brad Womack's another one that's one of the most humble people you will ever meet in your entire
100%.
life. To the point that you leave him and he makes you almost feel bad about yourself, right? Because he is so damn humble. You're just like, wow, how can I just be a better person?
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And you fall in that category with me, you know?
Yes.
But how did you end up? But going back, we met in the sauna, and you were just like, yeah, you know, I'm in beverage company or beverage business, and I was like, cool. And I think it was another time that we had actually met, maybe in the sauna again, that I actually figured it out, and I was just like, wow. For you to be the age that you are, to have the success that you have had with a brand that's in your face everywhere that I see it, and I know most people do as well. the humbleness that you walk with is tremendous.
Thank
you. Very good job with that. But tell me, how'd you end up in this business?
Yeah, it started, I mean, growing up, my family didn't come from a lot of wealth or anything. Again, immigrants came to the U.S. with nothing. So I felt that pressure very early on to want that financial success, to be able to relieve that burden for my family. And so that's really what drove me early on, I would say, is like I had to figure out how to make as much money as possible as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I got into entrepreneurship in high school and throughout college. I was trying to break into a finance job in Wall Street. That's why I studied finance and economics. But never got any interviews for any of the jobs that I wanted. And I was just trying to find my way in. And at some point, I just decided, well, I'm just going to start my own thing. And so had various ventures in the past, some with mild success, but nothing to the scale of what we're building with Path. But 22 years old, you know, just a couple of guys and a dream to build something that was massive, scalable, that had an impact tied to it, that was also simple at the same time. I think the simplicity was something that was very important for us because we didn't have the super technical background or the, you know, like skill sets to go do some AI super powered whatever. It was just like we wanted something that we could get on the market quickly, blow it up, make a bunch of money, and here we are 10 years later.
Yeah.
It's been more of a journey than we would have ever imagined, but you know, as cliche as it sounds, it's like they say the journey is the destination. And so now at this point I kind of look at it as not like getting to that finish line, but actually like on a day-to-day basis, what are we doing? How are we impacting people? What are we experiencing on a day-to-day basis rather than, you know, looking for that $1 billion exit or whatever it may be.
That's totally true. And that's just about life in general, right? It's all about the journey, right? When you get to that finish line, you're like, okay, now what?
Right.
So sometimes you want to prolong that finish line.
Yeah.
So I want to take you back to the feeling that you had when you guys, how many are involved in Path first and foremost?
I mean,
who started? And I know you've got a bunch of employees and things like that, but founder-wise,
there are 4 original co-founders. One of them dropped out pretty early on. But we just kind of early on, we just like we're sitting in a CVS parking lot, you know, like in the back of a pickup truck. Yeah. Just like brainstorming different ideas, you know, and we were thinking of every industry, nothing was off limits. Yeah. But we walked into the store, we looked at all the different aisles and stuff, just trying to, you know, when you're brainstorming, you're just throwing everything at the wall and hoping that something eventually sticks. And almost went into the credit card business at one point. Yeah. I forgot what other industries we were talking about. But ultimately, we walked into the beverage aisle and we saw the water aisle, and we said, oh, why don't we innovate on the packaging, the cap, what we realized is that a lot of the innovation had been on the liquid inside of the bottle, but everyone forgot about the actual packaging itself.
The marketing side of it.
Yeah. And so we're like, why don't we just put water in a metal bottle instead of in plastic? We thought it would be the easiest thing in the world. We'll have it on the market in 2 months. Like I said, we'll be millionaires and on yachts by next year. You know?
Yeah. And then you just progressively made it better and better and better.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, first 3-4 years were really tough. You know, I was driving Uber. I was working in an Italian restaurant on the weekends. I mean, I remember a year and a half, almost 2 years into it, we were sitting on the curb with negative $400 in our bank account. Yeah. So it took a lot longer than we thought.
It didn't take that 12 months to be on that yacht.
No. I mean, it took us 3 months just to find someone that would give us relatively today's small amount of money to just even develop the product and create it and take it to market. Then it took us another 8 months to find a designer and to find a manufacturer and to like basically beg people to make our product. And it doesn't happen overnight. No, it took a year just to get the product in hand, like an actual finished product. Wow. Yeah.
That's insane. So I want to go back to the very first, I want to invoke a feeling that you had with the very first big sale where you guys looked at each other and you were like, we made it. It could have been a case of water to where you were like, we have arrived. Yeah. To, the biggest thing. What's that one point in your life that you went, yes?
Okay, there are so many of those one points.
Yeah, but there's got to be that. There's got to be that first. I'm sure it climbed.
The first, there are like either one or two that I can point to. The first one I would say is, so we went to all of our like friends and family and we said, hey, we have this idea. Here's a business plan. Here's a presentation. Here's our financial projections. All the things you need to like show that you're actually serious about creating a business. And all the things I learned in like entrepreneurship class and all the things, right? And I said, this is our concept. Would you give us a little bit of money, anything to start? Do you want some equity? Shark Tank style, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they all just laughed at us. They're like, you're kids. This is a horrible idea. This is never going to work. And like, no, just no. And like, it was a quick no. It wasn't like, hey, like, come in, let's talk about it. Yeah. Like, I want to hear more. No, it was just like, no.
No, we're good. Yeah. So, they're kicking themselves now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But there are a couple of guys, these Ukrainian guys who I give a lot of credit to, and they're very happy now. They were connected to one of my co-founders. They said, hey, come in, let's talk. And they'd done very well for themselves in business, in electrical distribution, completely different business sector. And so we brought in the presentation, we pitched them on the idea, and they're like, look, we could either invest $50,000 or we could go buy a toy. The thing is, if we buy a toy with that $50,000, I know I'm actually going to enjoy it. If I invest in you guys, it's like I'm not really sure. Yeah. And again, Shark Tank style, at one point, the guy was like, and for that reason, I'm out. Yeah. Kevin O'Leary style. Yeah. But yeah, we ended up not being able to make a deal with them on that first meeting. They wanted like very strict terms and things that we thought were not good for us to start off with. But then we sat there another 2 weeks. There was no one else that was even close to investing, and these guys were close. And so we're like just talking about it, having a really rough time. But one thing we realized is we forgot our corporate files in their office when we went and did the presentation to them. So we had to go back and pick it up. Yeah. We walked back, and as we were going in the office to pick it up, one of the guys was walking out of the office. And so we just ran into each other. And he's like, man, I wish we could get something done. And we're like, you know what? Just screw it. Whatever terms you want, like, let's do it. Yeah. And we made the deal. And later on, a year later, we ended up renegotiating those terms because they were very difficult. Like, there was like anti-dilution and all of these things that you really don't want early on. Yeah. But we were actually able to renegotiate it and convince them that it was in the best interest of, like, if you want to see your investment succeed, like, this is not going to work long term. And they were open to it, which is awesome. And not always the case. With
not
people,
at all. Especially VC funds and stuff like that, and private equity, and Oh yeah. So individuals, there's a little bit more. Actually, there's a lot more flexibility with individuals, depending on the individual, right? But these guys are good guys, and
like I said, they're very happy now.
They're very happy now. So that was one of the ones. Give me another one.
Yeah. So sorry, that was not the first.
Oh, that's that one. Okay.
Sorry.
But that was a good feeling. You were like, all right, we've got some money now.
But the one thing that they needed in order to get that investment done was, they said, we need to see some sort of traction with your product.
Yep.
Like, go show us a sale.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to our local California State University that my co-founder went to, and we talked to we knew the commencement speaker for the graduation. And we were talking to them about doing the graduation, providing water for them.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even have a product. Again, it took another year after that to even produce it. But we told them, listen, just give us a purchase order to say, like, you want to buy this product, $3,000, you know, and for a big public, you know, college, $3,000 is not the end of the world either way, right?
Yeah.
But for us, it was like make it or break it. Like, we begged them, like, please give us this purchase order. And we don't even necessarily want to fulfill it. We might, you know, but we just need it to, like, show our investor.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the first ones where they gave us the purchase order. We went back to the investor. We're like, boom, here's someone that wants to buy the product.
Yeah.
Like, here's our first sale.
Uh-huh.
And eventually, years and years later, we ended up doing the commencement ceremony. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years later. We ended up doing the commencement ceremony for that school. But that's one of the things early on is, I would say, like, sales can solve for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And even just showing, like, a pre-order or a pre-sale, it shows that there's interest, that there's demand for whatever you're creating, whatever you're building, your product, service, etc. And you can take that back and leverage it to find investors, to find partners, to find employees, you know, whatever it is. Sales is one of the cure-alls, I think, in business. Like, if I go tomorrow and, you know, whatever massive customer says, I want to order 100 million bottles of Path, I can take that to the bank. Like,
yes,
you can take that and you can go do so many other things with it, right? So sales is a very powerful tool, I would say. And so that was the first, like, sale kind of in a way that really we were able to leverage and get our first investor on board.
Now, outside of that, was there another big one that you were like, it looks like there's one or two that's on the top of your head?
There's another. The other major one that comes to mind is, so we started, like, let's say beginning of 2015. By spring of 2016, a year and a few months later, that's when we actually officially produced the product. And I can tell you stories about all the production issues, like, to get there, crazy stories. But we originally, like, went to our local natural food stores, like Whole Foods and those types of stores, Sprouts, etc., and tried to sell the product in. Because at the beginning, when you start a product, like, you're kind of following the template of, like, you want to find your target customer, your core consumer, demographic, psychographic, all these, like, terms that, you know, buzzwords that people use. And so, like, we thought our core consumer was at Whole Foods, or, you know, these places where they care about sustainability and all that good stuff. But once we got into, you know, there's a chain called Piazzas and some other chains that are like along those lines, natural groceries. Once we got into them, we found out that we got completely lost on the shelf. So in a beverage aisle of, like, 100 different water brands and all these different beverages, and they put us on the bottom left corner. We had no visibility, which visibility is, like, the number one mover in consumer
you need to be
product.
eye level. You need to be in someone's face.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly. So we just got lost on the shelf in, like, a sea of other brands, and the product didn't move. So half the battle is getting into the store, and the other half the battle is getting out of the store, right? Getting the consumer to actually pull you off the shelf. And we weren't getting pull off the shelf, so it was just collecting dust on the shelf. And so that was a low point for us. And this leads me to, like, the big sale that I'm talking about. Is at that moment, you know, basically fall of 2016, this is over a year and a half after starting, this is when we had negative $400 in our bank account. We had 15,000 bottles sitting in the warehouse. The product wasn't moving. We weren't getting sales. Like, what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to pivot away from the natural food stores and go after 7-Eleven. And so we sat there, we drew out a map of all 220 7-Elevens in Northern California. And there's this, like, you can go on Google and say, like, create my delivery route, and you just put in all the addresses.
Wow.
And we just, like, created a route, like these routes, you know, and we had 2 cars, 3 guys, you know, and next morning after we decided that, we met at 5 a.m. and we just dispersed all over Northern California. And it wasn't like one particular sale. It was that next 30 days, we put the product in every single 7-Eleven in Northern California, 220 stores, just driving all over every single day, 7 days a week, you know, all day, just relentless. And we would just literally go into the parking lot, because you can't make a deal with the guy that's working at the cash register.
How does that work? How does that work?
So 80% of the products that 7-Eleven has, they're corporate
driven. Yeah.
The other 20%, they can decide what's in the store.
Okay.
And so once we realized that we can go on an individual basis, we would literally sit in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven with, like, sunflower seeds and Red Bulls.
Yeah.
You know, and, like, we would just wait till the store owner shows up. We would just sit there.
Wow.
Yeah. And once they show up, we go in, and you just, like, we were really good at building relationships, cracking jokes, sell them on the product. You know, we had a cooler in hand, like, with our product in the cooler, so it was cold when we brought it to them. And basically we told them, look, buy a case from us. It's going to sell. Give us good shelving. And that was the beauty of it versus, like, the natural food stores. It's like, you could get the eye level. You can get right by the door handle.
Yep.
And there's only one fridge for water in these 7-Elevens.
Yeah.
So it's, like, very, you know, you get that space, like, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to sell. Like, it's just the nature of the business. And so give us that eye level, by the door handle, you know, and the difference between getting 1 slot and 2 slots, or 1 slot and 3 slots, or 1 slot and 4 slots, which is half a shelf, is, like, exponential. Like, the more slots you get, the more, like, your sales, it's not like linear where you sell, like, 1 versus 2. It's like 1 versus 3 versus 7. You know, it goes up rapidly. And so we would just fight for as much shelf space as we could, and we would come back in a week, and the product would, like, 99% of the time was selling. Yeah. Without any marketing behind it. We had no money for marketing at the time. And so, actually, we did. Like, sometimes they would let us put a sticker on the fridge. That was our marketing.
That was your, like,
marketing. If they let us do that. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of how we started. And, I mean, we built amazing relationships with these 7-Eleven owners. One of them became an investor. One of them, like, we would go to her house for dinner and, like, just spend time with her family. Like, we took over entire fridges in 7-Elevens. Like, it's unheard of. Like, we had, like, literally one day went into her store, pulled out every single other brand, put it in her back storage, and just filled, like, I saw videos of it, like 2 fridges full of Pathwater. And we were selling, like, hundreds of bottles a day, which is, like, you know, unheard of. And
you know, it's funny that you bring that up, because I've always been of the mindset is good business builds on relationships, period, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're constantly selling or anything else, but you will buy from somebody you know and trust, period. Yes. And that's almost business 101. And they don't necessarily teach you that in college.
No.
They teach you, these are the 5 things you need to do. You have to have a business plan, a marketing plan, of this, of that, of that. Where does the relationship fall into place there? And one of the things I think generationally, and one of the downfalls that we have because of phones is its lack of relationship.
Yes.
So I've even told, our boys as they grew up was, if any one of you can become a salesperson and have that specific one-on-one connection with an individual, you will conquer the world, because sales is dying, right? Because it's all email, it's all text, it's all, there's very little face-to-face interaction. And that's something, you travel a ton, and it's because I think of that, right?
1,000,000%. You took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Like, the difference between seeing someone on a Zoom, like even us here, like, we've talked many times, we hang out, but when when we hang out in person, it's different.
It's
right?
night and day.
And you see someone's body language, like there's a different level of communication. It's just, even on Zoom, it just doesn't do it, right?
It doesn't.
And so most of the meetings or deals that I've closed, or investors that I've done deals with, come from in-person meetings. Actually, like one of the, tools in my toolkit is like, if I really want to have a higher potential of closing a deal with someone, what I'll do is, if I can't get a meeting set up with them, I'll just say, hey, I'm going to be in the area on Tuesday. Like, we live in Austin. I'm going to be in New York on Tuesday. And I would love to get dinner with you while I'm there. I have no plans to go to New York. I'm literally just saying that to go.
You're like, babe, I'm going to New York.
But it's more like, people will also make the time to meet with you if you're in town, versus like if you're, it's just one of those things, like,
it becomes less transactional, right?
Yes.
Because there's always going to be the want and the need for that interaction, right? And to your point, there's a barrier on the phone, on Zoom, there's still a barrier.
Yes.
But, face to face, again, you can read people, you can see what they're, and you can react to that in different ways. And that's huge. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is most people, I always say I buy from people, not companies. Meaning, I've had a banker that's gone to 3 different banks. I follow him. I don't buy from his bank. I buy from him because of the relationship that's had. And that's something I think that's kind of lost. And those individuals that can do that are going to conquer the world because of that, because we've become desensitized. And it's just happened over time. It's nothing that's really been done. I think it's been done purposeful no matter what. But, you will conquer the freaking world if you can do that. So that's 100%. Tremendous. And that's probably a part of a lot of the success that you've had.
Absolutely. It's hard. It's easier said than done, as they say, right? Like, it's hard to do because there are times where I find myself like overstretching, as we've spoken about, and just like trying to be everywhere at once and try to see everyone at once. But it can be well worth it. That one relationship can change everything.
And it's kind of funny, you've had this mass amount of success at a very young age, and you met your wife. And so I know the story behind that, and I don't know if you want to give a little a brief on that, but it's going to come back to how you deal with that and your business, right? Because it's tough. Being a hustler, you're on the road to do one thing, and then something happens that you really want, love, appreciate, and everything else. And it's how do you balance all of that as a young entrepreneur?
I was just talking with one of my mentors about this, and it cycles is how he described it to me. This guy's built a multi-billion-dollar business from scratch, for many years, and so he's busier than I am, but I would say, there is no like balance. I would say it's just you try to. What I like to describe it as is like work-life integration instead of balance. Is like, how can I kind of combine all, and it's not like separate. Work and life are not separate for me. Like, I was on a boat in Europe this summer, and I was like taking a phone call, you know, but I was still on a boat in Europe with my wife, you know. So like, you make it work, and you figure out how to like do, you know, try to combine everything into one, right? But there are periods of time where it's like just heavy on work. There are periods of time where it's lighter on work, where I can spend more time focusing on personal life, and there's always a lot of blurry times in between that.
Yeah,
right?
and I think that is balance even in itself, right? It's Bristol and I working together. We work all the time, but we also enjoy each other all the time, right? Now we will, you know, take certain periods of time where we'll be like, Thursday night we're going to dinner, this is just us or whatever, and we kind of disconnect. But what I'll even find by the end of the night is she'll go, hey, did you see that email from earlier? And I'm like, yeah, you want to respond? Okay, let's respond to it, you know? But we find joy in that, right? But I also understand that if there's ever a point where she's like, look, no, let's just completely disconnect, I'll 100%,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
But we both enjoy what we do, you know? So she's a huge support system for me.
That's amazing.
You know, and it's even looking at, you know, you look at the Cardones, right? And one of the things that Elena says about Grant is she's a massive support system for him to enable him to do what he does.
Sure.
That's huge. And until you have that and are surrounded by that, you don't know what that's like. And you don't know that hole that has been filled by an individual that's willing to sacrifice and do that. So I look at my wife, I mean, she's a rock star. You know what I mean? And to be able to support me in the ways that she does allows me to do what I do. But she's also right there doing, you know, she's got her own little online clothing thing, but she also sells all of our properties, heavily involved in the business too.
Amazing.
But more than anything, she's that support system, you know, and that's huge. And once you find that, that's huge. And it's you got to nurture and take care of that too at the same time. So
absolutely.
To your point, balance is meshed. You know, there is no right or wrong way for it. It's what works for you. You know, and it's finding that and having open communication with that person, which is big as well. Because a lot of times people don't know that they're doing something right or wrong unless they're told. If no one tells you that something you are doing may be incorrect or maybe hurting someone's feelings or something like that, if you never know, how can you change, right?
100%.
And it's that whole ignorance is bliss, but you have to have that communication, and that's huge. You know?
Just that openness.
100%, you know? So with that, you guys met. And tell me a little bit about your bride.
I mean, she's the most amazing person in the world. I'm a very lucky guy. But we met on an app, as a lot of people do these days. I think I saw a statistic, it's like 60% of people these days meet online or an app.
Really? It's convenient too, right? You know, because otherwise it traditionally, my wife and I, you know, we had mutual friends in high school and everything else, but we met in a bar. I worked in a bar. She taught dancing. You know. And
I love that. Like, I love the face-to-face traditional, like, you know, it kind of sucks. Like, I got, like, you get lucky, you know, in the fishing in the pool of, like, you know, finding a mate. But I think, honestly, going into that first date, I was not very excited. You know, I was not expecting it to turn out the way that it did. Because I thought, you know, I just had preconceptions, and I think it's hard to, like, really get a sense of someone just through a few images and, like, a short profile that everyone's trying to craft perfectly to, you know, attract the right partner. But, you know, worked out. You know?
You know, I hate to interrupt you, but it's funny that you say that about that process. And we talked about sales. You see what I mean? Do you see how those both interact?
100%.
And isn't that wild how, you said it's really hard to find out how someone is, what they are by a screen presence.
Yes.
It's the same thing in sales. It's the same thing in business. Isn't that wild how that comes together?
Yeah.
Didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah,
No,
when you said that, it clicked off in my brain.
Yeah, I like that. It's like you can like the amount of like trust that you're able to build and like see into another person's, you know, intentions and personality and character is vastly different on a screen versus in person.
There's no emotional connection.
Catch. Yeah.
And that's what it is, right?
Yes.
You know, face to face is emotional at some point, right?
Absolutely.
That person is now real, and they're not real over the phone, over text, or over Zoom.
Right. I agree. And so it was a very short conversation on the app. Hey, how's it going? Let's go on a date in a few weeks. And we ended up just meeting up and like had the best night ever. It was like a very there was a big spark on that first date. I don't think I've laughed that hard in a decade, you know. And
she's a firecracker, man.
She is.
She is
one of a kind.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about what she's thinking or anything. She's gonna let you know.
Yeah,
you know.
Wears her heart on her sleeve, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's something I really appreciate about her. I remember like the first date, we were talking about like what makes a good relationship, and she's like, it's 100. I said like, you know, a good relationship is 50-50, and she's like, no, it's 100-100. And I was like, well, what if I'm like 80? You know, like I didn't want to be like completely vulnerable right out the bat, you know. Right. And she's like, no, it has to be 100-100.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And that I think set also a tone for the entire relationship, that I just let go of the like
inhibitions.
Yeah, like white lies, all these little things that you do to like make yourself seem better, or you know, try to craft this like persona. I just let all of it go, and I just said like, this is who I am, this is how I am, and to also feel like that radical acceptance from her. And I hope it's both ways. Like, it's a good feeling, because most people that you interact with, you know, you're always wearing some sort of like a mask. You know, you're always putting on a face, like, you know, and in some respects, I think that's like kind of the transactional world that we live in has like led more and more and more people to do that. But even I think there's a book that I was reading about like acting, and even this is an old book, it's from like the 70s, and talks about how like it's actually expected that once you leave your house, like you put on a mask for the world and you walk out. So it's interesting to think about, but it's definitely allowed me to step more into my authentic self, even outside of the house, and live that, you know.
Yeah, and it's wild too. Even when you bring that up, it's people do that to be accepted, either in a sales, in a relationship, or anything, right? You know, outside of business, in business. But if you think about, I know personally, the people that I gravitate to are those that are a little bit more raw, that don't have that, because you don't have to go, is this real? Is this not? Is it, you know what I mean?
True.
And I don't know if that's an age thing or what, you know, but I've always gravitated to those that are just more raw, and has nothing to do with being refined and being a good person and this, that, and the other, but those that you know that they mean what they say, and they say what they mean. Period. You know, you just don't beat around the bush. Here it is. And, you know, anything that I say that may come out harsh, understand it's in love, and it's not, you know, I want the betterment of you and me and everything else. But hey, let's just get to the point, and let's make this good, better. How can we do this? You know, type of thing.
Our buddy Khalil, Sun Life Organics comes to mind when you say that. He's one of those people that a lot of people just gravitate towards, but he's just coming out of love, but he can be very raw.
You know, and especially if you don't know how to take it, right? You know, and it's kind of funny. Speaking of Brad and just the Womack brothers in general, there's a time where I went, okay, guys, stop. Never again do we have to preface any conversation of, hey, man, I'm not trying to be ugly or this, that, and the other. I love those guys, but I'm like, just say it and just understand. If it comes out harsh, it's not coming out harsh because, you know, you're trying to cut or you're trying to, it's coming from a good place.
Yes.
You know, and and as long as you know that, and that's a vulnerability that most people can't, you know, overcome, and that's happened with age as well. But that's just taking that mask off, right? But there is those times where you have to do it. You know, there's times where we'll go into certain places or be in certain groups, and my wife looks at me and goes, hey, I need you to, you know, pull back this, that, or the other. And I'm like, all right, because she knows. And then if certain instances happen, she'll look at me and she knows what's getting ready to happen, or like I've got something to say about it, and she's like, and I'll pull it back or what have you. But you know, just understanding that it's being genuine. Yes. You know, which is something that I think is starting to show itself a lot more. Yeah. And especially in younger generations and kids that I've been around that I love seeing.
I think, I'm trying to find this balance. Like, I think I've swinged on the pendulum both ways of like being genuine, but also sometimes like knowing your audience and having like a filter, like, you know, and at one point I was like, I want to be genuine. I just want to like throw it all out there. Yeah. And then now I'm kind of swinging back a little bit towards like, not everybody needs to see like it doesn't mean that you should lie or like, you know, be fake, but it doesn't mean like you can also like filter out some of the things that people are not ready to hear, maybe, you know?
Well, and it's being in the middle.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's politically, it's socially, it's everything. Everything is swung so far from one side to another that there is no more middle. Yeah. You know, so those that live in that middle ground are like the unicorns. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You know, and that's what we need. Yeah. We need that in the middle interaction that unfortunately has been lost. But I think it's still coming back around, you know, which is good, you know. Agree. Well, we have been in here for a little while. Yeah. This is something, again, this is just a start. I want to do many of these together.
I love it.
And I love hearing your story. We're going to definitely get into it a little bit more. This is a tremendous brand. Thank you. You know, it's something that I love. I've always got these with me. And I love the fact, and one of the things, it's kind of funny, you brought up packaging, is I love the fact that it's black as well, but it's reusable. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I dig about it as well, is I've typically got a lot of the bigger, larger ones that I'll use in the gym and stuff. I travel, these are always in my bag.
Love it.
And you're the only ones that have done it like that, man.
100%.
You know, so you guys need to check this stuff out. If you don't know what it is, you should. So I appreciate you, brother.
Shout out.
And we'll definitely do more of these.
Absolutely.